Imagine a teenager, barely old enough to vote, stepping onto the biggest stage in football and single-handedly changing the sport forever. No social media hype, no glossy interviews, just raw talent, determination, and an unstoppable hunger to succeed. His name was Pelé, and what he did on the football pitch would not only redefine the game, but etch his name into the history books for generations. This is the story of how Pelé, a young boy from Brazil, conquered the world, not once, not twice, but 3 times, winning the FIFA World Cup and becoming an immortal icon in the process. Born Edson Arantes do Nascimento, 1940, Pelé grew up in the small town of Três, Brazil. Life was tough, his family wasn't wealthy, and his father, a footballer himself, had been forced to retire due to injury. But Pelé's love for football started early. Legend has it, his first ball wasn't even made of leather. It was a sock stuffed with paper. Yet, even with this humble start, there was something about Pelé that made him stand out. His passion, his fire, and his raw ability. From the streets of Boru, where he played barefoot with his friends, Pelé's skill became impossible to ignore. By the time he was 15, Santos FC, one of Brazil's most prominent clubs, had come knocking on his door. Imagine that, a kid, barely out of school, already being courted by a top-tier football club. This was the moment when Pelé's journey toward football immortality truly began. At Santos, Pelé flourished. He was a different breed of player, explosive, creative, and fearless. Whether it was his powerful shots or his effortless dribbling, he could make defenders look like mere spectators. By the time Pelé was 16, he wasn't just another young talent, he was a force of nature. His debut season with Santos saw him score 36 goals in 29 games. But as impressive as that was, nothing could compare to what came next. The stage was set, Sweden, 1958. Pelé, at just 17 years old, was about to embark on a journey that no one could have predicted. Brazil hadn't yet won a World Cup, and the weight of a nation's hopes fell on the shoulders of this teenager. Initially, Pelé wasn't even supposed to be the centerpiece of the squad. He was young, untested on the world stage, and many doubted whether he was ready. But as fate would have it, Pelé's skill couldn't be ignored for long. After an injury early in the tournament, Brazil needed something, or someone, special to reignite their hopes. Enter Pelé. In the quarter-finals against Wales, Pelé scored the only goal of the match, a stunning moment that marked his arrival on the global stage. But that was just the beginning. The semi-final against France saw Pelé score a hat-trick, dismantling one of the strongest teams in the competition with ease. He was no longer just a promising youngster, he was the future of football. And then came the final, a showdown between Brazil and the host nation, Sweden. If Pelé had felt any nerves, he didn't show it. In front of 50,000 fans, he delivered one of the most iconic performances in World Cup history. His second goal of the match, a sublime display of skill where he flicked the ball over a defender's head before volleying it into the net, cemented his status as a superstar. Brazil won the World Cup 5-2, and Pelé, with tears streaming down his face, had just become the youngest player ever to win football's most prestigious prize. At 17, Pelé had already achieved what most footballers could only dream of, and this was just the beginning. After his performance in 1958, Pelé was no longer just a footballer. He was a national hero. The entire world had taken notice. His name was on everyone's lips, and expectations soared. Brazil's hopes rested squarely on Pelé's shoulders, and the pressure was immense. But Pelé, ever the prodigy, didn't back down. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, Pelé continued to dominate. At Santos, he led the team to numerous domestic and international titles, and on the world stage, he became the symbol of Brazil's footballing brilliance. Opponents tried everything to stop him: hard tackles, defensive schemes, double teams, but Pelé always seemed to find a way through. Yet, despite his incredible form, the next World Cup in 1962 would bring challenges that Pelé had never faced before. The 1962 World Cup in Chile was supposed to be another triumph for Pelé. Brazil, reigning champions, entered the tournament as favourites, and Pelé was expected to shine once again. But football, like life, doesn't always go according to plan. In the second match of the tournament against Czechoslovakia, disaster struck. Pelé, after scoring a goal in Brazil's opener, suffered a serious injury that would rule him out for the rest of the tournament. For any other team, losing their best player would have spelled doom. But Brazil's squad was deep, and in the absence of Pelé, other stars like Garrincha stepped up to carry the team forward. Despite the setback, Brazil went on to win the tournament, claiming their second consecutive World Cup. But for Pelé, watching from the sidelines, it was bittersweet. He had tasted victory again, but this time, he wasn't the hero on the pitch. When Pelé limped off the field in 1962, the world wondered if they had seen the last of the greatest footballing prodigy in history. Two World Cup titles were already in the bag, but Pelé's hunger was far from satisfied. The fire that had burned inside him as a boy, playing barefoot in the streets of Bauru, was still there. And so, the stage was set for his return to greatness. Pelé had one more chapter to write, a final act that would ensure his name echoed in football forever. In 1966, the world was eagerly waiting for Pelé's return to the World Cup. Held in England, this was supposed to be Brazil's chance to secure a historic third consecutive title. Pelé, now in the prime of his career, was expected to lead his nation to glory once again. But the 1966 World Cup would prove to be one of the darkest moments in his illustrious career. The tournament started well for Brazil and Pelé, as he scored in their opening match against Bulgaria. However, what followed was nothing short of a disaster. Pelé became the target of brutal fouls and heavy tackles from opposing teams, desperate to neutralize his influence on the pitch. In the second match against Hungary, he was kicked and battered so relentlessly that he was forced to sit out the next game. But Brazil needed him. Despite not fully recovering from his injuries, Pelé returned to the field for Brazil's third match against Portugal. It was a decision that would cost both him and his team dearly. Pelé, already injured, was subjected to more vicious fouling and received little protection from the referees. By the end of the match, Brazil was knocked out of the tournament, and Pelé was carried off the field once again, this time in agony and frustration. The defeat was humiliating, not just for Pelé, but for all of Brazil. After the loss, Pelé declared that he would never play in another World Cup. His love for the game hadn't diminished, but the pain, both physical and emotional, left him disillusioned. For the first time, the world wondered if the legendary Pelé had been broken for good. But legends don't fade away quietly. Despite his vow never to play in another World Cup, Pelé's passion for the game proved too strong to keep him away. Brazil needed him, and he knew that his story was not yet finished. By 1970, the Brazilian national team was undergoing a transformation. They had a squad filled with talented players, but something was missing: the heart, the soul of the team. Pelé was at missing piece, and when he announced his return to the national team, Brazil's hope soared once again. This time, Pelé wasn't just a star player. He was the leader of a team determined to reclaim their place at the top of world football. But this wasn't the same 17-year-old boy who had burst onto the scene in 1958. Pelé was now a seasoned veteran, a man who had endured pain, setbacks, and defeat. He had something to prove, not just to the world, but to himself. The 1970 World Cup in Mexico is often regarded as the greatest World Cup of all time, and Pelé Brazil was at the heart of it. From the very first match, it was clear that this was a team on a mission. With Pelé orchestrating the attack, Brazil swept past their opponents with a combination of skill, flair, and sheer joy for the game that had never been seen before. And so, the stage was set. The 1970 World Cup final saw Brazil face off against Italy, a match that would not only decide the champion, but would also determine which country would claim the Jules Rimet trophy outright. Both nations had won the World Cup twice, and this third victory would be the deciding factor. The pressure was immense. Pelé knew that this was likely his last chance to lift the World Cup trophy. As the teams lined up in the sweltering heat of the Estadio Azteca, the eyes of the world were on Pelé. Would this be his final triumph, or would the pain of 1966 come back to haunt him? The match began with a flurry of excitement. Brazil's fluid, attacking football was on full display, and in the 18th minute, it was Pelé who opened the scoring with a towering header that left Italy's goalkeeper rooted to the spot. It was a moment of pure brilliance, the kind that only Pelé could deliver. But Italy wasn't going to go down without a fight. They equalized before halftime, setting up a tense second half. However, this Brazilian team, led by Pelé, wasn't going to be denied. In the second half, Brazil unleashed their full arsenal. Goals from Gerson, Jairzinho, and finally, Carlos Alberto sealed a 4-1 victory for Brazil. As the final whistle blew, the Brazilian players, led by Pelé, erupted in celebration. It was more than just a victory. It was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and determination. Pelé had done it. He had not only won his third World Cup, but he had also solidified his place as the greatest footballer the world had ever seen. Winning 3 World Cups is a feat that no player before or since has managed to accomplish. But Pelé's legacy goes far beyond the number of trophies he won. He transformed football, not just in Brazil, but across the globe. He was more than just an athlete. He was an ambassador for the sport, a symbol of hope and inspiration for millions. Pelé's style of play was something the world had never seen before. He combined grace and elegance with power and precision. Whether it was his dazzling dribbles, his pinpoint passes, or his thunderous shots, Pelé played the game in a way that seemed almost effortless. But behind that effortless style was a fierce determination, a burning desire to be the best. Off the pitch, Pelé was a symbol of humility and sportsmanship. Despite his fame and success, he never forgot where he came from. His love for the game and his respect for his opponents made him a beloved figure worldwide. Even after his playing days were over, Pelé continued to be a global icon, advocating for peace and using football as a tool to unite people. As we look back on Pelé's career, one thing is clear: he wasn't just a footballer. He was an artist, a magician, a once-in-a-lifetime talent who changed the game forever. Winning 3 World Cups wasn't just a testament to his skill, but to his resilience, his leadership, and his unyielding desire to be the best. Pelé showed the world that no dream is too big, no challenge too great, and no obstacle too daunting. He took a sport that had already captivated millions and elevated it to an art form, and in doing so, he became immortal. Pelé may have hung up his boots long ago, but his legacy will live on forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to GoalGist for more in-depth football stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.